Why does a people that make up less than 0.2% of the world's population consistently rise to the top in business, finance, education, and influence? Walk through the halls of Harvard, the boardrooms of Wall Street, the laboratories of Nobel Prize winners, and you'll find a pattern that has puzzled historians, economists, and social scientists for centuries. From the Rothschilds to Einstein, from Carnegie's advisors to today's tech titans, Jewish minds have shaped the architecture of modern prosperity in ways that seem almost supernatural. But here's what they won't tell you in business schools or economic textbooks. This isn't about luck, privilege, or some mystical genetic advantage. This is about something far more profound and accessible to anyone willing to understand it. This is about a mindset forged in the fires of ancient wisdom, tempered by thousands of years of adversity, and refined through principles that King Solomon himself inscribed in the bedrock of human consciousness. Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of assumption and reveal the true source of Jewish prosperity. We're going to connect the dots between the ancient scrolls of Jerusalem and the modern boardrooms of Manhattan. We're going to discover why Napoleon Hill, the master of success psychology, found himself repeatedly drawn to the same mental laws that have guided Jewish thinking for millennia. This isn't about religion or race. This is about recognizing patterns of thinking that create patterns of prosperity. This is about understanding that wealth, true wealth, begins in the mind and flows through principles that are as old as civilization itself. The Jewish people didn't become successful by accident. They became successful by design, by following a blueprint that was written in the wisdom of Solomon and refined through generations of deliberate practice. If you're ready to uncover the ancient truth that has built generational wealth for centuries, subscribe now, activate notifications, and stay with us until the end. This is not a video, it's a blueprint for transforming your mindset and your life. Let us begin with a story that changed the course of human understanding about wisdom and wealth. 3,000 years ago, a young king named Solomon stood before the Almighty and was offered anything his heart desired. While other rulers might have asked for military might, vast territories, or endless treasures, Solomon made a choice that would echo through eternity. He asked for wisdom. "Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong," he said. And in that moment, he demonstrated the first and most fundamental principle of the Jewish millionaire mindset: wisdom before wealth. The response was immediate and profound. "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, or for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings." Here lies the great paradox that the Jewish mind has understood for millennia. When you seek wisdom first, wealth follows as a natural consequence. When you prioritize understanding over accumulation, abundance becomes not just possible, but inevitable. This isn't mysticism. This is the fundamental law of value creation that Napoleon Hill would later call accurate thinking. Watch a Jewish child grow up, and you'll see this principle in action from the earliest age. While other cultures might reward their children for good grades with money or toys, Jewish families reward learning itself. The child who asks the most insightful questions during Sabbath dinner is celebrated. The teenager who challenges conventional wisdom with thoughtful argument is praised. The young adult who chooses a difficult field of study over an easy path to quick money is supported and honored. This creates what Hill identified as a definiteness of purpose, aligned with the acquisition of knowledge. The Jewish mind doesn't see education as a means to an end. It sees education as the end itself, knowing that all other forms of prosperity will naturally flow from a mind that has been disciplined to seek understanding above all else. In the Talmud, There's a saying, "Much have I learned from my teachers, more from my colleagues, but most of all from my students." This reflects a mindset that sees every interaction as an opportunity to gain wisdom, every challenge as a chance to deepen understanding, every failure as a lesson wrapped in temporary disappointment. Consider the story of Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, who taught Warren Buffett that the stock market is not a weighing machine in the short run, but it is a weighing machine in the long run. Graham's approach to investing was fundamentally about understanding the true value of a company, understanding the psychology of markets, understanding the difference between price and worth. He didn't seek to get rich quick. He sought to understand deeply, and wealth followed as a natural consequence. This principle transforms how one approaches every aspect of life. When faced with a business opportunity, the Jewish mindset doesn't ask, "How much money can I make?" first. It asks, "What can I learn? What do I need to understand? What wisdom do I need to acquire to make this endeavor not just profitable, but meaningful?" The money becomes a byproduct of the mastery, not the goal that drives the pursuit. Hill taught that the mind can achieve whatever it can conceive and believe. But the Jewish tradition goes deeper. The mind can only conceive what it has been trained to understand. This is why Jewish families invest so heavily in education, why they push their children to question everything, why they create environments where intellectual curiosity is the highest virtue. The second principle that shapes the Jewish approach to prosperity is what we might call identity through education, but it goes far beyond formal schooling. It's about understanding that who you become is determined by what you feed your mind, and that the process of learning itself shapes your identity in ways that create lasting wealth. Walk into any Jewish household on a Friday evening, and you'll witness something remarkable. As the Sabbath candles are lit and the family gathers around the table, children aren't just expected to sit quietly and eat. They're expected to engage, to question, to think. The father might pose an ethical dilemma from the week's Torah reading. The mother might ask the children to explain a concept they learned in school. The grandparents might share stories that carry lessons about integrity, perseverance, or wisdom. This isn't casual dinner conversation. This is systematic mental conditioning. From the earliest age, Jewish children are taught that their thoughts matter, that their questions are valuable, that their minds are their greatest asset. They're being shaped to see themselves not as passive recipients of information, but as active creators of understanding. Napoleon Hill identified this as the principle of autosuggestion, the process by which thoughts repeatedly held in the mind become integrated into the subconscious and begin to influence behavior automatically. But where Hill focused on suggesting specific goals or desires, the Jewish tradition focuses on suggesting a fundamental identity. I am a learner, a thinker, a seeker of wisdom. This creates what psychologists call a growth mindset on steroids. The Jewish child doesn't just believe they can learn. They believe that learning is what they do, that questioning is who they are, that the pursuit of understanding is their birthright and their responsibility. Consider the phenomenon of Jewish Nobel Prize winners. Jews have won Nobel Prizes at a rate roughly 100 times higher than their percentage of the world's population. This isn't because Jewish people are genetically superior, it's because Jewish culture has spent millennia perfecting the art of creating minds that are primed for discovery, innovation, and breakthrough thinking. The Talmud teaches that the shy person cannot learn, and the impatient person cannot teach. This reflects a deep understanding that learning requires vulnerability, the willingness to admit ignorance, to ask questions that might seem foolish, to expose one's thinking to criticism and correction. Jewish education systematically removes the barriers that prevent most people from learning effectively. From the tradition of chavruta, studying with a learning partner who challenges and questions every assumption, to the practice of pilpul, the art of logical argumentation that sharpens thinking through debate. Jewish educational practices create minds that are not just filled with information, but trained to think dynamically, creatively, and critically. This educational identity creates a particular relationship with failure that is crucial to understanding Jewish prosperity. When a Jewish child fails a test, the family doesn't ask, "Why didn't you study harder?" They ask, "What can we learn from this? What don't we understand yet? How can we approach this differently next time?" Failure becomes feedback, not judgment. Hill wrote extensively about the importance of learning from failure, but the Jewish tradition takes this further. They don't just learn from failure, they expect it, welcome it, and use it as a tool for deeper understanding. This creates resilience, but more importantly, it creates the kind of innovative thinking that sees opportunity where others see only problems. The third principle that drives Jewish prosperity is perhaps the most misunderstood: purpose-driven prosperity. The popular narrative suggests that Jewish success is driven by greed or materialism, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The Jewish relationship with wealth is fundamentally spiritual, rooted in the understanding that prosperity is a tool for fulfilling divine purpose, not an end in itself. The Hebrew concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, provides the framework for understanding how Jewish minds approach wealth creation. Money is not pursued for its own sake, but as a means of creating positive change, supporting family, contributing to community, and advancing human flourishing. This gives Jewish wealth-building efforts a sense of mission that transcends personal accumulation. Solomon himself embodied this principle. When he was granted wisdom and wealth, he didn't hoard his blessings or use them for personal indulgence. He built the temple, created systems of justice, established trade relationships that benefited not just Israel, but surrounding nations, and left behind writings that continue to guide human thinking thousands of years later. His wealth was always in service of something greater than himself. This purpose-driven approach creates what Hill called a burning desire backed by faith. But it's not just desire for wealth, it's desire for the impact that wealth can create. Jewish entrepreneurs don't just want to build successful businesses, they want to build businesses that solve problems, create value, and contribute to human progress. Consider the story of Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine and refused to patent it, saying, "Could you patent the sun?" When asked why he gave away what could have made him one of the richest men in history, Salk replied that the purpose of his work was to eliminate suffering, not to maximize profit. This reflects the Jewish understanding that true prosperity comes not from what you accumulate, but from what you contribute. This purpose-driven mindset creates several practical advantages in wealth building. First, it provides the kind of long-term motivation that sustains effort through inevitable setbacks and challenges. When your goal is merely personal enrichment, it's easy to lose motivation when things get difficult. But when your goal is to create something meaningful, to solve a problem that matters, to contribute to something larger than yourself, you find reserves of energy and persistence that surprise even yourself. Second, purpose-driven prosperity attracts support from others. People are naturally drawn to support causes and enterprises that serve something greater than personal gain. Investors, customers, employees, and partners all respond more positively to businesses that have a clear mission beyond profit maximization. Third, this approach leads to better decision-making. When you're guided by purpose rather than just profit, you make choices that create lasting value rather than short-term gain. You build relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. You create products and services that genuinely serve human needs rather than just extracting money from consumers. The Jewish understanding of prosperity is deeply connected to the concept of stewardship. Wealth is not owned, it's managed on behalf of something greater. This creates a sense of responsibility that influences every financial decision. Jewish families often think in terms of generations, not just immediate needs. They ask not just, will this make us money, but will this create a legacy? Will this serve our family's values? Will this contribute to the communities we're part of? This long-term, purpose-driven thinking creates what economists call sustainable competitive advantage. While others are focused on quarterly profits or immediate returns, Jewish businesses are building systems, relationships, and capabilities that create value over decades and generations. The fourth principle that shapes Jewish prosperity is one that modern society has largely forgotten: disciplined routines and sacred rhythms. The Jewish calendar is structured around rhythms that create both spiritual renewal and practical advantage. The Sabbath, the holidays, the daily prayers, the weekly Torah readings, these aren't just religious observances, they're systematic practices that condition the mind for success. The Sabbath, in particular, represents a profound understanding of how the human mind works. Every week, from Friday evening to Saturday evening, observant Jews step away from work, business, and the pursuit of material gain. They spend time with family, engage in study, reflect on the week past and the week ahead, and deliberately disconnect from the urgent to reconnect with the important. This isn't a weakness, it's a strategic advantage. Hill wrote extensively about the importance of periodic rest and reflection for maintaining mental clarity and creative power. But the Jewish tradition systematized this principle thousands of years before Hill was born. The Sabbath creates a rhythm that prevents burnout, maintains perspective, and allows for the kind of deep thinking that leads to breakthrough insights. Consider what happens during these 25 hours of Sabbath each week. Without the distractions of work, technology, or commercial activity, the mind is free to process the week's experiences, to see patterns and connections that might be missed in the rush of daily activity, to have the kind of conversations with family and friends that deepen relationships and generate new ideas. Many Jewish entrepreneurs credit their best business ideas to insights that came during Sabbath reflection. The mind that is given regular rest and focused time for contemplation becomes more creative, more strategic, and more capable of seeing opportunities that others miss. But the disciplined routine extends beyond the Sabbath. Daily prayers create moments of reflection and intention setting. Weekly Torah study creates intellectual engagement and ethical grounding. Annual holidays create cycles of celebration, renewal, and community connection. These rhythms shape the Jewish mind in ways that create both spiritual fulfillment and practical advantage. The principle of delayed gratification is built into Jewish religious practice. Fasting on Yom Kippur, waiting for marriages to be consummated, studying for years before being considered knowledgeable. These practices systematically train the mind to defer immediate pleasure for greater long-term benefit. This is precisely the kind of mental discipline that creates wealth. Hill identified this as the principle of self-discipline, but the Jewish tradition goes further. It's not just about controlling impulses, it's about creating positive habits that compound over time. The Jewish approach to routine is about creating systems that make success automatic, rather than leaving it to willpower or motivation. The practice of giving tzedakah, charity, is another example of disciplined routine that creates prosperity. Jewish families don't just give when they feel generous or when they have extra money. They give systematically, often setting aside a fixed percentage of income for charitable purposes. This creates a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity, and it builds the kind of reputation and relationships that create business opportunities. The fifth principle that drives Jewish prosperity is perhaps the most powerful: collective wealth and strategic alliances. The Jewish understanding of success is fundamentally communal rather than individual. The tradition of supporting each other's businesses, sharing opportunities, and creating networks of mutual advantage has created what Hill called mastermind groups on a cultural scale. In Jewish communities around the world, you'll find informal networks of business relationships that span generations. A Jewish businessman in New York might have connections to manufacturers in Israel, investors in London, and distributors in South America, all maintained through family relationships, religious connections, and community ties. These networks create opportunities that would be impossible for any individual to create alone. The Hebrew concept of kehillah, community, reflects a deep understanding that individual success is impossible without collective support. Jewish families invest not just in their own children's education and development, but in the education and development of the entire community. They understand that when the community prospers, individual families prosper. This creates what economists call network effects and positive externalities. When Jewish businesses succeed, they create opportunities for other Jewish businesses. When Jewish individuals achieve prominence in their fields, they often become sources of opportunity and guidance for others in their community. This mutual support system creates a rising tide that lifts all boats. Consider the phenomenon of Jewish success in Hollywood. It wasn't just that individual Jewish immigrants happened to be talented in entertainment. It was that they supported each other, shared opportunities, and created a network of mutual advantage that allowed Jewish creativity and business acumen to flourish in a new industry. The same pattern can be seen in finance, technology, academia, and virtually every field where Jewish people have achieved prominence. The success is both individual and collective, personal and communal. This principle extends to the Jewish approach to partnerships and business relationships. Jewish businesses often prioritize long-term relationships over short-term profits. They understand that a reputation for fairness and reliability creates more value over time than any single transaction could generate. The Jewish concept of emet, truth, provides the ethical foundation for these business relationships. Jewish businesses succeed not by taking advantage of others, but by creating genuine value and maintaining relationships based on honesty and mutual benefit. This creates the kind of trust that leads to repeat business, referrals, and long-term partnerships. Hill wrote about the importance of going the extra mile in business relationships, but the Jewish tradition systematized this principle through the concept of lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law. Jewish businesses often do more than what's required, not because they're legally obligated, but because they understand that exceptional service creates exceptional results. The sixth principle that shapes Jewish prosperity is strategic generosity and the law of return. The Jewish understanding of giving is not about charity in the conventional sense, it's about investment in the broader ecosystem that supports prosperity. The Hebrew word tzedakah is often translated as charity, but it literally means justice or righteousness, reflecting a completely different understanding of what it means to give. Jewish families don't give because they feel sorry for others. They give because they understand that supporting the community creates the conditions for their own prosperity. This isn't just good karma, it's good business. When the community is strong, opportunities multiply. When the community is weak, everyone suffers. The Jewish tradition teaches that giving should be done at the highest level, where the giver helps the recipient become self-sufficient rather than dependent. This reflects a sophisticated understanding of how to create lasting value rather than just temporary relief. Consider the Jewish approach to education funding. Jewish communities around the world have invested heavily in schools, universities, and educational institutions. This isn't just about helping Jewish students, it's about creating centers of learning that benefit entire societies while ensuring that Jewish values and wisdom are preserved and transmitted. This strategic generosity creates what Hill called the law of compensation, the principle that what you give out comes back to you multiplied. But the Jewish tradition goes further. It teaches that giving creates a mindset of abundance that attracts more opportunities for wealth creation. When you give regularly and systematically, you train your mind to see money as a tool rather than a goal. You develop confidence in your ability to create value and generate income. You build relationships with others who share your values and priorities. You create a reputation that opens doors and creates opportunities. The practice of giving also creates practical advantages in business and investment. Jewish philanthropists often become aware of promising opportunities through their charitable involvement. They meet entrepreneurs, inventors, and innovators who are working on solutions to the problems they care about. Their charitable giving becomes a form of deal flow for their investment activities. The seventh and final principle that drives Jewish prosperity is faith in action, what the Hebrew tradition calls emunah. This isn't passive belief or wishful thinking. It's active confidence that creates persistent action toward worthy goals. The Jewish understanding of faith is fundamentally practical, involving the willingness to act on beliefs even when outcomes are uncertain. This faith in action creates what Hill called persistence, the ability to continue working toward goals despite obstacles, setbacks, and apparent failures. But the Jewish tradition goes deeper. It teaches that faith without action is meaningless, and action without faith is powerless. The combination of the two creates an unstoppable force for wealth creation. Consider the story of Jewish immigrants who arrived in America with nothing but their determination to create better lives for their families. They didn't just hope for success. They acted on their faith that success was possible through hard work, smart decisions, and persistent effort. They started businesses, invested in education, and built communities that created opportunities for future generations. This faith in action manifests in several practical ways. First, it creates the willingness to take calculated risks. Jewish entrepreneurs understand that wealth creation requires venturing into uncertainty, but they don't take foolish risks. They combine faith with careful analysis, optimism with realistic planning. Second, this faith creates resilience in the face of setbacks. When Jewish businesses fail, Jewish entrepreneurs don't see it as evidence that success is impossible. They see it as information about what doesn't work, and they adjust their approach accordingly. Their faith in ultimate success remains unshaken even when specific strategies fail. Third, this faith creates the kind of long-term thinking that builds lasting wealth. Jewish families plant trees whose shade they may never enjoy, knowing that their children and grandchildren will benefit from today's sacrifices and investments. The Jewish understanding of faith is deeply connected to the concept of covenant, the idea that there is a fundamental relationship between divine purpose and human action. This creates a sense of destiny that motivates extraordinary effort and sustains hope through difficult circumstances. But this faith is always grounded in practical action. The Jewish tradition teaches that God helps those who help themselves, that miracles happen to those who work diligently toward worthy goals, that faith without works is dead. This creates a powerful combination of spiritual confidence and practical effort that produces remarkable results. As we reach the end of our exploration, let us step back and see the complete picture that emerges from these 7 principles. The Jewish approach to prosperity is not about greed, luck, or exploitation. It's about aligning human effort with divine principles, creating systems that produce value over generations, and understanding that true wealth serves purposes greater than personal accumulation. The wisdom of Solomon and the insights of Napoleon Hill converge on a simple truth. Prosperity begins in the mind, flows through disciplined action, and multiplies when it serves others. The Jewish people have understood this for millennia, and their success is the natural result of applying these principles consistently over time. These principles are not exclusive to Jewish people. They are universal laws that anyone can learn and apply. The question is not whether you are Jewish, but whether you are willing to adopt the mental habits, the disciplined routines, and the purpose-driven approach that creates lasting prosperity. The first principle, wisdom before wealth, challenges you to invest in understanding before you invest in assets. The second principle, identity through education, calls you to see yourself as a learner and a thinker, rather than just a worker or consumer. The third principle, purpose-driven prosperity, asks you to connect your wealth-building efforts to something larger than yourself. The fourth principle, disciplined routines and sacred rhythms, invites you to create systems that sustain long-term success rather than relying on motivation or willpower. The fifth principle, collective wealth and strategic alliances, encourages you to build networks and relationships that create mutual advantage. The sixth principle, strategic generosity and the law of return, teaches you to give systematically as a form of investment in the broader ecosystem that supports your prosperity. The seventh principle, faith in action, empowers you to act on your beliefs with confidence and persistence, combining spiritual confidence with practical effort to create remarkable results. These are not abstract concepts or theoretical frameworks. These are proven principles that have created wealth, influence, and positive impact for thousands of years. They work because they align human effort with the fundamental laws that govern prosperity, success, and abundance. The Jewish people have never been the largest group, the most powerful military force, or the most naturally advantaged population, but they have consistently applied these principles with dedication and discipline, and the results speak for themselves. Their success is not mysterious, it's methodical, it's not magical, it's mental. It's not about being chosen, it's about choosing to think and act in ways that create value, build relationships, and serve purposes greater than personal gain. You have the same opportunity. You can choose to adopt these principles, to apply them consistently, and to build the kind of prosperity that serves not just your own needs, but the needs of your family, your community, and your world. The wisdom of Solomon and the insights of Hill are available to anyone willing to study them, understand them, and put them into practice. The question is not whether these principles work. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether you will choose to work with these principles, to make them part of your identity and your daily practice, to build your life and your legacy on the foundation of wisdom, discipline, and purpose that has created prosperity for thousands of years. If this message opened your eyes and stirred your heart, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a comment with the principle that impacted you most. And share this video with someone who is ready to escape mental poverty and walk toward generational abundance. You were not born to survive. You were born to prosper with purpose.